Hello, everyone. I am David Greenwald, the director of the Davis Vanguard. I want to thank everyone for being here. And I want to especially thank our guest, Davis Mayor Gloria Partida. This is our what's becoming our monthly webinar. And so we're really excited to have what I think will be a great discussion. So the way this is going to work is for the first 40 or so minutes of this, it's going to be a kind of a one-on-one discussion between myself and the mayor, and then we will open it up to questions. Please put your questions into the chat. We will try to get to as many of them as possible, make them be respectful, but they can definitely be tough questions. Just do it nicely. So without any further ado, say welcome to Gloria.
Hello, everyone. I'm so sorry. I was distracted by the chat. There was a great joke that was being written in the chat, and I was trying to follow it. So this is the problem with the chat, is that sometimes you get distracted by what's going on there. But thank you for inviting me, David, and thank you for continuing to keep our community informed, and for filling the gap of asking sort of the hard questions that are happening in the city. And so I've always appreciated that. I've always appreciated the not mainstream information that you get out. And so thank you. Glad to be here. And I'm also glad to have this conversation with members of the community. It's one of the things I enjoy the most. I always enjoyed it before I was on council, and enjoy it even more now that it has gotten really interesting at times.
All right. Well, just so people know, I've written down about 17 different topics, which of course we will get to in great detail. So in 17 hours, we will turn it. No, I'm just kidding. There's my joke. So Ms. Mayor, I guess I want to start, since we're going back into the purple, with a question about the COVID policies. And I know that the city doesn't set, kind of the baseline policies that is set by the county, but maybe explain how these decisions are being made by the county, because I mean, one of the things I think is frustrating for a lot of people is we're kind of yo-yoing between a red and a purple, where we're able to reopen, and then all of a sudden we have to close down, and then we have to reopen. And I'm kind of at the point where let's just stay shut, get those numbers down until we can get a vaccine, hopefully in a month or so. What are your thoughts?
Great. So I think that is it is incredibly frustrating, and it's really frustrating for businesses especially. And I think that we have to always err on the side of caution, because people's lives are at stake, and you have to be as cautious as possible. And of course, the county takes the instructions from the state, and we take instructions from the county. But you can't really control how people are going to behave all the time. And I think that is the real frustration. I was in Ace Hardware just yesterday, I think, or maybe the day before, and there was a woman that walked in, and she was an older woman and wasn't wearing a mask, and the person at the counter asked if she had a mask, and she said yes, and continued to walk in and shop. And then that, the poor clerk followed her around and said, can I offer you a mask? Can you please put your mask on? And the woman just completely ignored her, and people were visibly upset with her. And were saying, you need to put a mask on. And she just kept shopping and paid for her stuff. And then the people at ACE came out with their spray bottles and sprayed things down, but she had already breathed on everything in the store. So that's really frustrating. And I remember at the beginning of this whole COVID, when COVID was first happening, and there were people who were standing at the doors and asking people to use hand sanitizer and put on a mask before they walked in the doors. And they have stopped that practice. And I don't know how effective they would have been if somebody just walked past them anyway. But I do think that people standing at the doors would, would really kind of slow that type of behavior down. I think it's a lot of, we have to work with people. I think that harm reduction tactics are better than just hoping that people are not that people are going to do the right things. So for instance, the Healthy Davis Together, the university offered these small grants to students to put on safe Halloween gatherings. And so they gave them money so that they could put together like really small gatherings. And, there were like scavenger hunts, and there was, just a lot of creative ways that students could get together and do things for Halloween that were safe, and they were vetted by the people who were giving out the grants, and that is a way to acknowledge that students are going to want to do something for Halloween, but also have a means to control what those activities are and to encourage safer activities. And so I think that we have to really get together and think about ways that we can, maybe allow people to still eat inside of restaurants, even though we are in the purple, and, just really ensure that people are going to be safe in those situations. It's a tough thing. I saw that, that they just instituted the curfew, and was it the sheriff, I think in El Dorado County, put out a message saying that he wasn't going to enforce that. And there were other law enforcement agencies that just, stated that they were not going to enforce that. And that is not helpful, as, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. One of the things about working in the downtown is that I've been eating in restaurants pretty much throughout the pandemic. And when it first started back in March, it was a ghost town. There was literally no one around, nobody would come into the restaurants. You could order stuff to go, obviously not eat in. And then I thought one of the more brilliant moves that was made was to create the street seating so that you can now eat outside, and it's really livened up the downtown. People are coming, and I'm just not going to go inside and eat inside a restaurant, even if it's open. I'd rather, I'm comfortable sitting outside away from other people, but I'm not comfortable going inside. And I think the health research kind of bears that out. So it seems like, that kind of thing can work.
Right. And I think that the other effect of having more people around is that it's safer, right? So I think that, there's been a lot of conversations around the increase in crime and crime downtown and the homeless population downtown. And I think that when you have more eyes on the neighborhood, it feels safer. So if you're downtown and it's a ghost town, it's not as welcoming. and there aren't as many people, just keeping an eye on the businesses there. And so it's important to bring people into spaces as in as safe a way as possible.
So I want to kind of get into maybe some of the more controversial issues that we're facing, but kind of wanted to get an assessment. I mean, what do you see as kind of the most pressing problem in Davis, maybe not mentioning COVID at the moment?
Aside from COVID, it would definitely have to be our well, I think that they're interrelated, but it's definitely the homeless and crime right now. I think that for a while there, we were really talking about the lack of housing, but right now with all of the students gone and the vacancy rate that is dropped so much, I don't know that people are having a hard time finding housing. They're still having a hard time finding affordable housing, but that is a bigger problem throughout the state. But I think that what seems to be on people's minds quite a bit is the homeless population, and I think that is related to a number of factors that aren't unique to our community, but I think that this generally the stresses that people are feeling because of the COVID situation amplify all of the other things that we have to deal with as a community. And so I would say that that those are probably the things that people are most frustrated with.
So let's start with homelessness, because that's always a big issue, and that's certainly not an issue that's going away or going to go away because of COVID. What is the city doing, and how much progress has been made in the last couple of years toward some of the new policies that have been kind of rolled out?
So before COVID happened, we had just opened the respite center, and that is still there, and it's still serving the purpose that it was intended for. We are going to have a report out on that coming up pretty soon here, so that people can see how many people have been served, and what the successes of that are, and also to get some feedback from the neighborhood. I've visited the respite center a number of times and had some conversations with the people there. And I think that what surprised me the most was that at least a few of the people that I spoke with were born and raised in Davis. And so these are not, people that are passing through. These are people that have come from our community and have fallen on hard times. And a number of the people there had jobs, and so they just didn't have any homes. And so they were there washing their clothes and getting computer assistance and things like that. I think that the population of homeless that people see and that they are concerned with are people who are not in sort of that group that are maybe just temporarily homeless and are needing just a little bit of help to get back into housing. And that last group is just really the most difficult group to find solutions for. One of the things that we're considering right now is sanctioned camping. And one of the reasons we're considering sanctioned camping is because there's a lot of people who are camping. They're, you know, camping in the ditches, they're camping next to the movie theater, they're camping in the parks, and camping in those situations is unsanitary. It's not safe, and and um, and it makes people just really uncomfortable. So if we had a place that people um, could set up and had you know, porta potties and a way to you know, deal with trash and things like that, it would alleviate a lot of the burden that the city feels that it's facing from having people just, you know, camping in the few blocks in front of their house or something like that. And the other reason is that you really can't move people along. You can't tell them, you know, stop camping in this spot unless you have an alternative place for them to be at. And I really feel that, you know, once we have sanctioned camping, and once we have the, you know, a respite center that is, you know, really navigating people out of homelessness, and we have all of these services that are set up to get people into housing, then we can really start asking people to move along. So if people are not going to avail themselves of the services that we are providing and that we are setting down, we're, you know, offering for people, then I think that you can really start, you know, pushing on people and saying, hey, you know, why are you not using these services? And if you are not going to, you know, go across the street to the respite center, then you can't be sitting out here in front of the Korean church. If you're not going to, you know, go and camp at the sanctioned camping spot that we have, well, you really can't be here, because this is not a safe place to be. But you can't really push on people until you have something to offer. But once you do have something to offer, I feel that we can be a little more assertive in asking people to, you know, take those services or move along.
So it looks like we're going to have to do this kind of the Platte River approach, you know, a mile wide and an inch deep. So I'm going to move on to a different subject, just because I want to cover so many different subjects, and 40 minutes is really not a lot of time, as I'm sure you know. So I do want to talk a little bit about affordable housing, because, you know, you mentioned it. It's one of my biggest concerns. You know, my biggest concern about Davis these days is that, and I'm now approaching 50, but I'm not at 50 quite yet. But, you know, I still have small children, and, you know, there are less and less folks in town that, you know, live in that kind of 30 to 55 age bracket that have the families. And so we're seeing impacts on the community, whether it's, you know, declining enrollment, and all sorts of things. So how do we create housing so that people my age, my situation with small children, can be able to live in Davis?
Well, I think that one of the issues that is being addressed by the university and by the city, and that is student housing. So I think that the university building the student housing that it is building, and the city building the units of student housing that it has, will alleviate a lot of the crunch. And so it'll open up a lot of older apartments and housing where younger people can live, where young families can live. So young families won't be, moving into sort of all of the student housing units that are being created. And I think that will help quite a bit. Older units are more affordable just because they are older. And aside from that, I think that we need to find spaces where we can put down where we can dedicate some land to affordable housing builders, to people who build, the kind of the big A affordable. I like housing vouchers. I think that housing vouchers are a good way to get people to disperse into neighborhoods, and to you don't have to dedicate spaces, and you don't have to try to get the inclusionary housing. But those are so difficult to fund, one, and also to get apartment owners to take the vouchers. So there are people who have vouchers and have a really difficult time getting apartment owners to take them. And I think I mentioned this in something that I had written for the Vanguard, but Joe Biden it was part of his platform. He wanted to increase the number of housing vouchers that were given, and he wanted to really support that. And so I really hope that is that's something that comes along. But we do need to increase the number of housing units that we have in the city. It's not just Davis. It's the entire state of California has to provide more places for people to live. And I think that I often wonder why the nonprofit affordable housing entities don't partner more with developers. I really think that that there is a solution there where they could maybe replace some of the redevelopment money that has gone away, if there was a way that they could work together. I know there's a lot of obstacles to doing that, but I think that we have to think creatively.
And I think, in the post-redevelopment era, one of the problems that we have is that for the most part, the only way to build affordable housing is to build market rate housing, and then attach that market rate to the affordable in order to get something. And the problem is that, with costs of land and construction costs, it's really expensive to build affordable housing. And so, somehow I think we're going to need the state to really step in and go beyond what they've done with, what is it, 1A, 1B, one of those measures that provides a little bit of affordable housing money. But I don't know. It seems like that fell off the table once COVID hit.
Yes, yeah, for sure. And I think that we just had the conversation about the Yolo crisis nursery. I think that the other end of affordable housing, it's not really affordable housing, but the other end of the problem is that people just don't make enough money to afford housing. And things like, entities like the Yolo crisis nursery really keeps people from falling into poverty. I think you have to work on ways to keep people from falling into poverty and missing out on opportunities that are going to affect their earning potential for the rest of their life. That, I think that is something that we have to work a lot harder on. We have to, keep at-risk children um, from going down the path where they're not going to be able to earn enough to afford housing. That's a tough one. I mean, I really think that making enough money is the other problem.
Well, and I think you bring up a good point. When we had small foster children, we accessed the Yolo crisis nursery a number of times, because one of the problems that a lot of people don't realize is that, if you're doing job interviews, if you're trying to access services, you don't have a lot of options for leaving your kids somewhere for a few hours. A lot of people in those positions, they can't afford babysitters, they don't know anyone, they don't have reliable childcare. I remember, just having to go up to Woodland to access services, and they invariably would do the paperwork wrong. And so you're like standing, waiting there for 3 or 4 hours. It's like, how does anyone do this?
Right.
You
Right.
know, people have jobs, and if you don't have jobs, you're not going to get a job if you have to wait in line for 4 hours to get something done. I mean, it
Yes.
was just crazy.
Right.
And so I think, a lot of people, I think, haven't had that experience, and so they don't realize how valuable something like the Yolo Crisis Nursery actually is. And that's just one of the uses. Kind of the classic use for the crisis nursery is, kind of put the kid in a safe place while you calm down a domestic situation, things like that. So I'm gonna move us along here because I want to raise another issue that's increasingly bothered me. So I was probably one of the few people in town that actually supported the idea of district elections. And one of the reasons I did was I looked at other communities and what happened as the result. And so Woodland's kind of this classic example that a few years ago you had this kind of all-white male city council, and I'm not disparaging white males, but in a city like Woodland, which is probably 40 or 50% Latino, to have an all-white male city council, not to mention the gender factor, is really disproportionate. So they go to district elections, and by the next election cycle, all of a sudden they had 3 Latinos on the council. So it went from all white male to majority Latino. And so obviously, in a place like Woodland, that made a big difference. What I saw here in Davis, though, was really disappointing, because what we ended up with was, a very undiverse group of candidates, as it turned out. And it's also harder to elect people of color and students in this format, because it's basically single member, winner take all district. Which, if you're a political scientist, you realize that, single member districts are the bane or the creator of a two-party system. And so, it makes it actually harder, because it used to be, hey, you pick your top choice, and then maybe you want to pick somebody that you don't necessarily think is going to win, but you want to give them some support. Can't do that now. You got to pick either the person that you want to win, or you got to back somebody that you don't think is going to win. And so that makes it harder for those people to win. Now, I know you were opposed to it from the start. Is there anything we can do about this at this point?
So I think that you've heard that, I think it was Santa Monica, there was some,
Yeah, Santa Monica.
yes, that actually won the lawsuit. but Santa Monica is, they've got the money to fight a lawsuit. And I think I think at this point we just have to wait and see if people are going to start undoing districts. I really don't know what else we can do until then. But I was opposed to districts in Davis because we don't have any real concentrations of anything here. We may, once all of the student housing gets built, we may have some real concentrations of students in some of the districts. But as far as minorities, we're pretty well dispersed throughout the districts. And so I think that the districts in Davis actually made it a lot harder for minorities or people who are don't hold mainstream sort of ideas to win, right? So if you are myself, right? The Latinx community is definitely not all concentrated in my district. Not that I won just by the Latinx vote, but I think it does make it harder when we're as heterogeneous of a community as we are. And I think in Woodland it made sense. There were a lot of neighborhoods that were very concentrated Latinx. But the other thing is, I think in Woodland, I think that the young Latino community has really been activated, and so I think that was another factor for the increase there.
And then we may only get to one more topic before we go to audience questions. But so what I want to ask you is about policing. Now, I actually got into this space because of the police issue. And it's been interesting for me because when I first got involved in 2005, 2006, nobody was really interested in the police issue. It became a big burning issue that year, and it was very divisive. What we've seen in the last couple of years is really kind of community consensus and pushing along. And so we have, the PAC, which ironically was very similarly composed to what was proposed back in 2006, which apparently was so offensive to the police and all sorts of members of the community. We have a professional auditor who's very good. And so the question now is, where do we go? From my perspective, I think, having been on really multiple ends of the issue of defunding the police, for lack of a better term, maybe reimagining the police. But we've seen what happens on a lot of these mental health calls, and police. I give a lot of police officers, I have problems with some, but a lot of police officers I give the benefit of the doubt to, and they mean well. But they're not really well equipped to handle somebody who's having a mental health issue. They basically, they know force. Some of them are pretty good at talking, but a lot of them aren't. A lot of them don't really relate to people that have mental health issues, and yet they find themselves on the front line. And we know from research that they're actually much better models. In Eugene, Oregon, I know you're aware of, but there's the Cahoots model. It's been running for 30 years. And the thing about the model is that when they call out cahoots, they very, very rarely have to call for police backup. They're able to deal with these situations without having to use police, which means that you're lowering the risk for not only the person who's having the mental health crisis, but you're lowering the risk for the police on a whole bunch of fronts. So where are we with all this? Is this something that can happen in Davis?
So I know that our tri-commission, committee met last night, and I wasn't able to sit in on that because I was tied up in a different meeting, but I've been trying to sit in on those. And I think that they're making pretty good progress in putting forward some recommendations. And I know that Davis People Power has also been doing outreach and giving some input. And I think that you have to really use programs that are going to fit the community that they're in. So, every time something happens nationally, you get a local reaction, and sometimes they don't match. I mean, I the first person to say that we absolutely have to have these conversations around policing. That I think that everybody agrees that the policing as an institution has to be reevaluated. And before it was kind of like the sacred cow, right? You just didn't touch it, you didn't talk about it, you gave all the deference to the police department. And I absolutely respect the work that they do, but I do think that we have come to a place where where we're more comfortable asking whether or not that system is working the way that it should, and getting to a place where we are questioning. So yes, I think that we should look and see if there are better ways that we can respond that don't require force. I mean, not just it's quite evident. I mean, it's even outside of the police, there was the issue with that young person who died in the special ed school, who was a Davis student. He was 13 and was held in a position where he stopped breathing as well. So mental health training is critical for the police, in their school systems. We have to have a better understanding of what works for people who are in crisis. And so I'm really hopeful that through the PAC and through the community involvement, we can get to a place that we are comfortable with our police system.
And those who are following along on the chat, Morgan did a good job posting the stats. 24,000 total calls. I think that was in a single year, and only 150 calls needed police backup. So that's an incredible success rate. One of the things that really concerns me, about these issues is people say, well, you just don't want the police. But, the police are not necessarily the best equipped for all these calls. There are certain calls that they absolutely are, and we should have them and be available, but, not always. And so this isn't necessarily an anti-police, pro-police. This is what is the best use of very scarce resources. Because we unfortunately continue to live in a community where we're really strapped on resources overall. And so, I think a lot of the other issues that we haven't really had a chance to touch on really relate to that lack of resources, lack of revenue, lack of money to do some of the things that we maybe like to do.
Right. Yeah, and I think that that is going to become more of a problem for us as a city if we don't find a way to diversify our revenue stream. And so I think that people have this idea that they look at downtown and they see all of like the retail that has gone out of downtown, and they're really concerned about that. And they're saying, well, this is why we're having such a problem, because you see all those empty storefronts and you see all these businesses that have left, and businesses have, left because people are shopping online more than they were before. And I mean, this is something that has happened everywhere else as well. And I sat in on a meeting where they were talking about how COVID has really accelerated what was already happening to retail. But anyway, I think that people look at downtown and they think, well, if we only had more retail, if you did a better job of getting businesses into downtown, we wouldn't have a problem with our revenue stream. But the revenue that comes out of downtown is a very small part of what we use to keep ourselves going as a city. So, I think that I don't know if we need to just get that message out more. We have to educate the community more, and understanding that we have to be open to other forms of revenue.
All right. Well, we are now going to transition to the second part of this. So take a deep breath, everyone. And Michelle is now, for the next 20 minutes or so, going to read them, and then Layla will take over. So Michelle, why don't you read the first question?
I think I'm going to read them actually.
Oh, okay.
I'll read them the whole time. So the first one that we have is Gloria, the residents of District 4 voted no on Measure B by a 3,591 to 2,328 margin. This is a 60.7% against and only 39.3% for Measure B. What are your thoughts about that outcome?
Well, I think that the residents of District 4 were clearly the most concerned about the project because it was right in their backyard. I think it's natural that if something is going to affect you the most, or you perceive that you're going to be the most affected, then it's going to you're going to vote the way. I don't know if there wasn't, again, enough communication to allay the fears of the people in that district. The traffic was the biggest concern. I kept trying to tell people that, one, traffic is already a concern there, and we are trying to find ways to make that better in that area. But there's we have a lot of external forces that are making traffic that are creating problems over Mace. But what I heard over and over again is, well, you have space to build these places for innovation already. Let's do infill. Let's provide, like, for instance, if Schilling, which is leaving, if they just expanded into the space next to them or whatever, and they could grow right there. Well, if you put this innovation or businesses into infill spaces in Davis and work that way, you're still going to have more traffic. You're going to have more traffic that's coming into the city for that increased businesses, but you're not going to have any of the mitigation measures that we would have gotten from Measure B. And you wouldn't have, any of the impact fees that we would have gotten from Measure B. And unfortunately, we wouldn't have, we don't get any of the, housing that we would have gotten from that project. So what do I think it means? I think it means that people are very concerned and just not feeling comfortable with the change that would have happened there. And like I said, I don't know if you need more communication, or maybe people need to really feel the effects of not having the city revenue that would have brought. Maybe we're not there yet. There's a report about innovation centers and what they can really do to help cities. And places like, you look at places like Detroit, for instance, that have really declined, and I think people don't think that could ever happen to us. And I think that it can. I think it's a real reality. If we have a lot of very high maintenance amenities in the city, we've got, our bike trails are, I think, almost double what our road miles are. And we have great parks, we have great green belts, and those are all very high maintenance amenities. And I think that we need to really think about how we're going to continue to pay for those things.
All right, thanks. Layla, next question.
Yeah, this is another one on Measure B. So it says 14,341 people voted in the 3 council elections. And in those 3 districts, 15,110 people voted on Measure B, a 5% higher turnout than the council candidates got. What are your takeaways from these results?
Again, I think that people were really, really concerned about, this very large project. The bigger the project, the bigger the community engagement around it. I think people really understood that it was going to be a huge change for the city, and people were not ready for that change. I think people have this idea of keeping Davis small, and anything that moves away from that idea is very, very challenging for people to accept.
All right, thank you. And then the next one that we have here is, what plans does the city have to curb the increase in crime in Davis?
So that was, one of the things that I touched on before. Crime is up. I mean, the statistics show that, the crime is increasing. Again, it's not just here in Davis. It is a trend. I know that the police department has increased its patrol for downtown. Downtown, as we said, is one of the areas where there's not a lot of people there, and so where there's not a lot of people, you get an increase in crime. At the beginning of COVID, there was a fear that crime would be increasing. Actually, outside of the downtown, but it's turned out that we've got more crime that's increasing in the downtown area. I think that, in times like this where people are out of jobs and people are feeling, the stresses of what's happening, it unfortunately drives crime up. And what we are doing particularly is, as I said, the police department is working with the downtown businesses. They are, doing education for businesses on ways that they can discourage crime in the downtown area. They're meeting with the business owners and just in general, we are trying to get more patrol.
Great. And so the next question is, this one's a little nice one. What is one piece of news that made you happy this week?
What is one piece of news that made me happy this week?
What a great question.
Well, my grandson passed his math class, which we weren't sure he was going to do. And so I have to say that personally, we're very happy about that.
That's great. Congratulations to him. All right, so back to more serious ones. So the council authorized a subcommittee to review the transparency in government proposal offered by a group of commissioners and citizens. Will the subcommittee be inviting members of that group to discuss these proposals, and what is the likely schedule for consideration of those proposals?
Can you read that again, please?
Yeah, sure. So the council authorized a subcommittee to review the transparency in government proposal offered by a group of commissioners and citizens.
I see. Okay.
Will the subcommittee be inviting members of that group to discuss these proposals, and what's the likely schedule for the consideration of those proposals?
Yes. So yes, we do have a subcommittee, and we are intending to invite the authors of that proposal to have a conversation, as well as I would like to, invite not just the authors, but other commissioners that would like to weigh in on that. We have not scheduled that yet. We're in the process of seating our new council member. And so I think that once we kind of get that piece of business out of the way, that we will start working seriously on that proposal. But I think that is a really important piece of work, and I'm really happy that has come forward, and that we can get some good ideas and move forward, working more productively, I think.
All right, so the next question is, the city has repeatedly gotten into trouble through decisions made in closed session. How can the council provide more guidance to staff management and the city attorney about how to limit the subject matter discussed in those sessions beyond what is allowed under the Brown Act?
Beyond what is allowed in the Brown Act. So yeah. I think that there are very clear parameters around what you can discuss in closed session, and I think that we always follow what those parameters are. I think that there's some pieces of it of discussions that that are maybe more subjective, that people feel are more subjective to what we could just, what we should discuss or what we should do in public. But I think that for what should be discussed in closed session, those parameters are followed very carefully.
All right, so this is a different question. If there are worries about our rivers being polluted, it's great that it's raining. Should we worry about ashes being washed down?
I think that's an interesting question. I don't know. I have to say that I don't know enough about, how many parts per million or whatever would cause a problem in our rivers. But I think that just in general, after the fires, there is going to be an issue for how much ash is washed into our rivers. I don't know that there's anything that you can do about that except for do a better job of controlling fires. But when you think about how much ash there is out there, I do think that it will change the makeup of our rivers. Whether or not that's going to be a very serious problem or not, I couldn't say. If the question is, should we be like washing down our driveways and like that, I think that the recommendation was that we should not, that we should sweep up our ashes and put them into the garbage can. And but again, I don't know how much that is going to help when there's tons of ash that's being washed down the mountainside and into the rivers.
All right, so on the subject of resources, is the city working on increasing an affordable access to mental health care? This pertains to both the situation with our homeless community and police calls, etc.
So the city, in partnership with the county, is always working on the mental health. I think that one of the very few bright spots about COVID is that we have received a very large amount of CARES Act money, and a lot of that is going to housing people and keeping people housed, and some of that is going to Communicare, who does the majority of our mental health work, or in partnership with the county. And so and we did hire another person to work with a social worker to work with the homeless, and part of that is that person does a lot of like the mental health work.
All right, so what do you see as the vision that Davis has for what it is currently and what its future should be?
One more time.
So what do you see as the vision that Davis has for what it is currently and what its future should be?
What do I see is the vision that Davis has?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. I think that we don't know, because I think that is something that we have to have a conversation with our community. I mean, what my vision of Davis is I think much different can be much different from what our community at large has. And so we're embarking, very soon on our general plan for the, for the rest of the city. And we just are finishing up our downtown plan. I think that those two exercises really answer a lot of what we see as a vision for ourselves as a city. I would like for us to be a place that really taps into the innovation that's happening at the university. I think that there's so much that can come out of the work that is done at the university. It's a world-class university. There's a lot of solutions that can come out of the work that they do there, as not just biotech and food, but also they do a lot of work around social issues. And I think that we can really harness that and create an identity for ourselves as a city, as a place that supports that and that promotes that.
All right, so taking a bit of a turn here, what do you do about citizens who don't want anything to change in Davis? They just want the good old days.
I can sympathize